Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Deep Space Chats, coming to you from the Deep Space Initiative, DSI. Today, we are privileged to have two of our amazing team members and leaders of the Deep Space Initiative with us. Yeah, and as usual, I'm your host, Reginald, and Stuart is also live here as my co-host. Stuart, how are you doing?
I'm good. It is nice to do this again with you, Reggie. We had a really nice conversation in episode one of this second season with the founder and astronaut Sarah Sabri. And I think it's really interesting who she has gathered around her to form Deep Space Initiative. And I'm quite looking forward today to meet more of those people.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I think the quality of every organization is based on the quality of the team and the talent that you are able to assemble. So yeah, today we are privileged to have the president of DSI now. We have Chris Hanks Sembroski. He will tell us about how he got that nickname Hanks. We also have one of the senior advisors here at DSI in the name of Jen Fogarty. All these people are amazing people with very, very good experiences, rich experiences in the space industry. So, they've done so much, and I wouldn't want to. I would want them to introduce themselves and tell us more about their background and what they are up to these days. So I'm going to start with Chris. Yeah,
Yeah,
Chris.
Reggie and Stuart, thank you again for having us on today. It's an amazing thing to be a part of Deep Space Initiative and to be president to help guide us in the right direction to make incredible impacts moving into the future. And I think this is an excellent opportunity to reach many more people around the world. And so what brought me to this path where I'm on today, it's a varied and unique style of living one's life, I guess. But I of course, looking back and how I became an astronaut is very untraditional. I had heroes growing up that were astronauts. My brother was following all things baseball and sports and basketball, and he had walls of posters of these sports figures on his wall, and just posters and autographs and albums of baseball cards, and he would collect them and trade them. I had 8x10 glossies of astronauts and signatures, and that was my excitement and passion. And I grew up building model rockets. My dad encouraged that. They turned into large, high-power model rockets when I got to college, and I had a chance to see a space shuttle launch for the first time as an undergraduate student at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, which was absolutely phenomenal, especially seeing it happen at night from the causeway, which is between 8 or 10 miles away. When those solid rocket boosters lit up, you could read by the light of these engines from miles around, and it just absolutely shook the earth. And I was hooked. I had to do something that would get me close to space, and so I ended up working at Space Camp. That while it was there at Kennedy Space Center in Titusville, Florida, for a couple of years. And beyond that, after when that was done, I joined the U.S. Air Force and worked on big missiles in the middle of Montana, and started to realize that my career path in my life has followed big rockets, and they just kept getting bigger along the way. And then after leaving the Air Force, I kept my passion for space. My wife always knew me as a space nerd. In fact, I think I was wearing an old ratty Space Camp t-shirt the very first time that she and I met at a barbecue, and asked her about the space shuttle launch that happened that day and see if she had heard about it, which this was at the middle of Montana, and it's not a topic front of mind for a lot of folks there. But somehow or another it worked. So I'll let all those that are trying to win over a partner that to keep that in mind. That space is a draw for some reason, even though she was primarily an English language arts teacher. We moved out to Seattle, and I worked in building automation and controls for a number of years, using my ladder to go into different buildings to make them more efficient, and traded that in the ladder for a laptop and started doing data analytics constantly keeping an eye on what's going on with the space world. This was, it was sad to see the last crewed flight leave American soil when the space shuttle was retired in 2011, and it felt like there was a sad pause in the human spaceflight industry for a long time, until Bob and Doug flew on the Demo 2 mission in 2020, and I dragged my two kids into the living room, put it on the TV, and said, "You should watch this. This is what's happening. This is amazing. This is incredible. We're launching two people on a commercial rocket for the very first time, and it's the very first time since you've been alive that we've sent people back to space from U.S. soil, from Kennedy Space Center." And I think my older daughter just kind of rolled her eyes, but she sat and watched as, I guess my excitement was infectious. And who knew that was going to lead to bigger and better, crazier things? Because the following year, a Super Bowl commercial aired that said you could win a trip to space. I was sitting on the couch and took my phone out and donated to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And the next thing I know, I'm starting to get strange calls about a month later saying, "Hey, this is Inspiration 4. We'd love to get to know you a little bit better." And I get on a Zoom call and find out that the guy who I had launched rockets with in college and had toured Kennedy Space Center with had actually won the contest, and instead he couldn't accept the prize, and had chosen to give me his seat. And so the next thing I know, 6 months later, I find myself launching into space aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 aboard the Inspiration 4 mission. And through that, there was no other way I was going to go back from being involved in space in a more direct way. And so I took the opportunity to join with Blue Origin to help them launch their vehicle, the New Glenn rocket, as an avionics test engineer. I connected with the folks at Embry-Riddle to go back and start teaching space courses as an adjunct faculty member. And so I've had a tremendous experience engaging with those students from various corners of the planet, and getting to see their passions get ignited to see where they're going to go next. And through that led me to DSI, and connect again with Sarah to kind of promote that thought that we want to make the access to space limitless for those that are around the world. So that's how I'm here today, and that's the long version. And I'm sorry if you've already tuned out, but to me it's an exciting story.
Well, you describe your enthusiasm as infectious, and I think we got a little glimpse of that just in that short intro, so thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Jen, how about you? What got you into space?
Yeah, and I appreciate Chris's story, just because I think it's important for people to know there's not one right way to do this. And there's lots of different opportunities, and I do not have anything similar to his, but I don't have a straight line either. So it's kind of, they tend to be, let me tell you a story to tell you a story. So I grew up in New Jersey, north of Florida. I knew where Florida was. I knew what the space shuttle program was. I can recall, the stories of the Apollo era and even Skylab from family, a very aviation-centric family. So, there's stuff around me my whole life, but I was really obsessed with the human body and medicine and the idea of being in medicine. So I'm going down this pathway, but what they have in common is how does the human body deal with, adapt to, perform in these sorts of really extreme environments, all different types of expeditionary things. I became a little bit more focused on deep sea stuff for a while, but again, through your education and experience, it's interesting how all of that learning matters, right? You can't pre-predict it. I wasn't this architect of a career. I was just following passion and my freedom, to be able to pursue an education in different areas. But along the way, it's when your life gets interrupted by these things and you start to find where you can apply yourself, and it gets super exciting. So a bachelor's degree, a graduate degree. At the time, I have three brothers, two of which who ended up going the Air Force route. One became a high-performance jet pilot, along this parallel pathway while I'm pursuing medicine. And end up in graduate school pursuing medical physiology. So I'm at a college of medicine at Texas A&M, which, you say like definitely not a straight route when you move from New Jersey to College Station, Texas. And those sorts of culture shock. That was an expedition of our own at the time. So I'm there, and it's not. And again, for people who are pursuing degree, like I'm not in a single lab. I'm not in a single place. Like my work took me from a vet school, large animal clinic, over actually to a very famous place, which is called Kyle Field at Texas A&M, and the laboratory was in the field, like underneath, right? So like this is the craziest thing for me along the way. But in that lab where I was studying cardiovascular disorders of very, very tiny vessels to figure out how to save people from cardiovascular disease and heart attacks, the people right next to me in the same lab have what are called hind limb unloaded rats. And I'm like, what is this thing happening? What in the world are you doing to these animals and why? And they're like, oh, it's a model of bone loss, and we're funded by NASA. And then we run these hind limb unloaded animals on treadmills, which was really pretty extraordinary, to see like what is the effect of exercise. And I was like, what in the world is going on? So now I start understanding it's a model of bone loss. And of course, we're worried in people as they age or for some reason become injured and don't use their skeleton the same way, and they lose bone and they become vulnerable to more fractures and what are considered more comorbidities. Quality of life is diminished, functionality is diminished. So I'm like, wow, this is super interesting. So while I'm doing my work for my PhD, I'm learning about someone else's work just by sitting next to them. And then, we get finished with our work. I was very successful as what I was doing. I had great opportunities. But now I'm like, maybe it's possible I can get involved in this NASA stuff. I wonder. So the person who ran the lab, the principal investigator, he actually had that funded work. And he had a space shuttle mission experiment, which was on Columbia 107, which was in 2003. At the time, I became a postdoc, and he asked me to run his lab at Kennedy Space Center. So I moved over there for a couple of months. We set up his lab with everybody else. And that is, other than the Challenger mission, that is the second most devastating loss of a shuttle crew. So we were there at the landing strip. So while I'm there in the excitement of the mission and the science and meeting the people and training crew, now we have this catastrophic situation at landing. And this was one where understanding the altruism, and the meaning behind what we do in space, like the discovery capability of sending people into these extreme circumstances, we have an obligation to use these opportunities to learn as much as we can. Sometimes we're learning from the astronauts themselves. It ultimately became my job later on. But they were technicians for us. They got the work done up there in space so that we could learn and we could interpret the work and get the data back or get the animals back. I mean, there was so much logistics and infrastructure going on. That's why it takes, several thousand people to make these missions happen. We send a few people who are emissaries, as we call them, but behind the scenes, it really does take quite a large village to make all this happen and happen successfully. But being there at landing, and we were actually next to the families on these grandstands at the landing site, and to hear them call Columbia over and over again and Columbia not respond. And we didn't, remember this is 2003, cell phones were around like flip phones, but there they block cell coverage. It's all satellite. And there were military there because there was an Israeli astronaut on board, Alon Ramon. And so there were security concerns, but those people were getting satellite calls. And for those of us who have military family, when you see people respond a certain way, something terrible has happened. Like they're not talking to you, but when they close in on a group, they very expeditiously moved the family to the buses and moved them out. And then we got moved down and moved out. And about a mile and a half away from the landing site, our cell phones lit up. And that's when we understood that there was something tragic. So I was there for a couple more months while all of that sorted out and really decided my career path was going to be different than going into straight up biomedical research. I had some opportunities, at pharmaceutical companies to try to understand how to improve healthcare. But I was like, I think I have a different thing I need to do. So I started applying for jobs, particularly at Johnson Space Center, which is the Manned Spaceflight Center, the home of the Astronaut Corps. Also, the home, at the time, it wasn't the human research program, but it was essentially the content. And that's where really the healthcare is managed of the crew and the occupational health of the people who support the crew. So I ended up getting a job there in 2004. And that was the start of like my career trajectory, which again was very circuitous at times. I consider myself often what I call, and if you're a fan of baseball, a utility player. Like, what needs to be done? What problems need to be solved? Where do they need people to connect things and translate between doctors and engineers? They often don't speak the same language. So to connect dots and figure out medical hardware and how you derive requirements and justify to program managers, I got into this role because I could understand a lot of it given my education background, environment I grew up in. And I started to play roles that required more and more responsibility and more authority, and ultimately ended up as the chief scientist for the NASA Human Research Program in about 2016, 2017 to 2021. In the meantime, I also realized along the way I had a responsibility not only to NASA, but to other people, particularly women. Women who wanted to be in STEM fields and STEM careers, like, what is this thing? How do I navigate it? There were always lots of challenges. And it also included international people. And that was one of the biggest recognitions, because as someone under the U.S. federal government, I really couldn't employ foreign nationals. Very, very challenging. And we also can't fund work outside of the United States. There's all kinds of acquisition rules about that. And it's a challenge because there's incredibly intelligent, talented, creative people out there who aren't U.S. citizens or in the United States. So how do we tap into that? How do we provide opportunities? We have our partner agencies, but I felt like there had to be something I could do just more fundamental, which I found to be mentoring. Like, you can find your own path. Let me just help you understand what your choices are sometimes, or how to decide between things. I'm not going to decide for you, but I can talk to you about processes I think about the pros and cons. So how I ended up along the way, not only was a career path, but also mentoring young women. And sometimes it is very serendipitous, meaning we couldn't have pre-predicted this, but at some point, and I'm sure Sarah might remember the date, but she reached out to me, let's say, I'm pretty sure it was LinkedIn. And I responded. I had the time, the bandwidth, whatever it was, and we connected and started talking. And we just built this friendship and this relationship over time. So by the time she had her storied, and she just had her 3rd-year anniversary, and I was capable of being there at her launch to support her. And then the idea of, we recognized, given her experiences of opportunities for international people, were really constrained, and they're hungry for information, hungry to be involved. So she was the architect of DSI and asked me to join her on that journey, and I was more than happy to be part of it.
I find it very interesting how you mentioned the word serendipitous, and it sounds like it applies to both of your stories in wildly different ways, but there is an element of that woven through both of them. And I don't know, maybe that's also encouraging for people to hear that are interested in the space sector, sure. Because you can plan as much as you like, and you can try and be in the right place at the right time and whatnot, but you can do what Sarah did and just kind of shoot your shot and message someone on LinkedIn. And then there's things that happen that nobody can control, right? And that's probably in a way encouraging to know that there's things you can just never plan for.
Right.
Well,
I think that's
reminder,
absolutely true. Yeah, go ahead, Jen. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Chris. To be open. The other part is, I think sometimes we miss those things because sometimes you are very super focused on accomplishing a thing or being on what you think is a trajectory in the way you want, and it could be. But if you're excluding those opportunities, you're just not open to them, that you didn't know they were there. And they are risky. Like some of these things are scary and challenging. They're all those things. And so you have to work through the risk benefit. And sometimes there's times of your life where that's more doable, versus when you're going to shy away from some risk and go a different way. But I don't. I think I totally agree with the commonality, this serendipity, but I don't think it's uncommon. I think the challenge becomes the right time, right place for you, and you knowing it's there. I would say the riskiest thing I did in my education to career path was take that opportunity to be essentially a lab manager, which in academia, believe me, it was not respected, really. Like, you just did a PhD and you're going to go manage this lab. Well, you're also managing science. So I think they underestimated the intellectual component. But I was like, hell yeah. I'm like, you think I'm not going to go to Kennedy Space Center and be part of a spaceflight mission because you don't think it's professor like? That's the other thing. Like, being willing to be a little unorthodox and not get hung up in what I call like intellectual snobbery. Uh, but it's risky because, these people are going to judge me if I put my CV in for a professor role. Like, well, why did you do this other thing that seems, not productive because you didn't publish a paper? I was like, oh, okay, if you don't appreciate that, I'll find somebody else who will. But there's all of those sorts of things going on in real life that in order for serendipity to happen and work, you yourself have to be willing to step out, like Chris getting on a rocket because his friend couldn't take the advantage opportunity.
Well, and looking back, it wasn't just me saying yes to riding on the rocket. Like, how in the world did I get offered that opportunity to begin with? And it's hearing your story is the word serendipitous comes up to my mind again. That because I mean, you weren't alone, even though you felt like you had no cell coverage and you were isolated on the SLF, shuttle landing facility. Just that was a time when I was still working at space camp and had not joined the Air Force yet, and so all of us former camp counselors are closely connected and texting each other. Hey, they lost Columbia, and my roommate said, "Oh, they'll find it again later." And as he went back to sleep, and then realized later that's not what he meant. Having the opportunity, just being around it, and knowing the dedication that you and other people that were trying to understand why did this happen, and seeing, how everything was laid out on that hangar floor and being toured through that, it really brings that human element back into all these things. Like, it doesn't matter where these people were born, from Israel to the U.S. It didn't matter. It just mattered that they were humans and that the mission that they were doing was, vitally important to helping advance health around the world, or giving other people the chance to go to space successfully. Because everything that we did on Inspiration 4 was with that mindset as well. Thinking about, we're starting on the shoulders of giants, but we know we want to go further and higher. This isn't going to be the last all-civilian mission to go to orbit. It's just going to be the first, and we're going to enable bigger and better things to come down after us. And knowing that all those things were happening simultaneously, it's like you said, you put yourself in positions where you let others know what you're passionate about and what you are capable of doing. And so when they come thinking of it's because they've thought of, well, I need someone with this specific skill set, or I want to try to accomplish this. How can I make this happen? And that's how Sarah approached you. That's how other people came to you and said, hey, I want you to run this lab. That's why my friend, said that he wanted to give his ticket to me, because he knew that there was a passion and there was a skill set, and that you were ready for those opportunities. And so when they come, you're willing and able to say yes. And I think that's the challenge. It's like a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome, and I think it's really important to understand that you're in these positions and people come to you and ask you to do things that are a little bit wacky and crazy, thinking that you're more than capable of handling it. Even if you're not quite ready to say yes, you're more than willing to grow into those positions and more than capable to do so.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I mean, that's really great. I think the aspect of being ready for the opportunity, I think it's something that it's always very, very important that, to put yourself in that place of opportunity, that when the chance comes, you are ready to take it. I think Jen shared a little bit of how she got in touch with Sarah and got into DSI, but I don't think we've heard that from you, Chris. So how, what brought you into the DSI fold?
Yeah, so as I was working at Blue Origin, my time there ended as New Glenn got to flight, and I was looking around trying to see where I could make an impact next. And I've always had a passion for doing exciting things when it comes to people realizing their potential. I love seeing, I love telling a great story about space, and I love seeing, anywhere from, your third graders on up to professionals in industry to see eyes light up when they realize they understand something new that they don't realize they didn't for the first time. That's really rewarding, and so I think I ended up putting a post out on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I'm looking for the next amazing opportunity." And Sarah replied over LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I think I might have something that I'd love to work with you on." And we just started a conversation about what she was doing at DSI and how it's breaking down artificial barriers around the world and providing access to educational resources and research opportunities and getting various people to collaborate together in new ways. And simultaneously, while this is happening, I had a chance to go to Texas to see the eclipse when the full solar eclipse happened across the U.S. About a year ago. Unfortunately, the clouds rolled in just at the wrong time, but everything still got dark, and it was an amazing experience. And there, I met some really amazing people and learned that there was this opportunity to reach out to people that might have come to the United States without much available to them, that they're still struggling to find their ways as new arrivals to get connected to the community. And it just so happened that there was an organization that was gathering folks together in Kent, Washington. It just so happens to be where Blue Origin's headquarters is also located. And I was talking to the founder of this company called Voyage, and she was trying to figure out how she can break down barriers and connect people across different cultural lines. And I think I casually mentioned, well, since you're co-located, I wonder if there's an opportunity with Blue Origin or connecting astronauts with these refugees. And that kind of sparked something in her mind. And so we put together this dinner series happening about once a month that connected people that were interested about space and wanting to hear an astronaut story to people that were new arrivals and have an oddly similar experience of being willing to throw themselves in a very unfamiliar situation, say yes to strange opportunities, believing that there are outcomes that are worth fighting for and worth striving for on the other side. And those dinners started proving to me that there are amazing connections to be had that we're missing out on, that there are amazing experiences to realize just from connecting with people from all over the world. When I was in space, people talk about the overview effect. That's Frank White's term for people that go to space and have some sort of cognitive or spiritual shift when they look back at the planet Earth and realize something they didn't realize before. And I knew I was going to go to space and not see the lines on a map. I'm not going to see red versus blue, Democrat versus Republican, or you name it. I wasn't going to see one country's nationality versus another. And yeah, that's all true. But I felt more connected with the beauty of the planet that I was seeing. And I wanted to go be in the presence of these places. When you see the snow-capped Andes Mountains right next to the Pacific Ocean and right next to the Gobi Desert in South America, when you see the beautiful blue waters of the South Pacific and the coral reefs off the Australian coast and see that reddish brown interior of that country, it's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And I wanted to be connected to that even more and go visit those places. And that meant I had to get a passport, because it turns out you can go to space without needing a passport, but you can't travel within the atmosphere without one. So that was objective number one. Secondly, it's like, all right, realizing that having a family and those obligations at home, we've got to go to school, we've got to go to work. We can't just travel constantly, but what we can do is we can connect with people from those places. And that's what these dinners were allowing to happen. It was allowing for people from these various locations to tell their stories, to share their hearts, to see what's important to them, to see what they need help with next, to see what opportunities they're trying to achieve, and realize it's the exact same thing that we are all wanting to achieve. And that's safety and security for our families, a place to grow up that's healthy, and a chance to do the next big, great thing. And for a lot of us, it was doing that in space. And so connecting through that, it felt like a natural connection and progression to be a part of what DSI's mission is, which is to do those amazing connections, but do so with that space, with space as a platform to connect people together, and then provide additional resources and opportunities to learn more about what space can do, should be doing, and allow an international group of collaborators to come together to really push forward a new mission. And so, what is that? So beyond that, so then through me telling that story and connecting with Sarah, she's asked me to be the president, and I'm excited to be here as that to help push things forward and using standing on the shoulders of giants, including Jen here. I'm not trying to embarrass you, but you're one of those experts we were always looking up to as kids and college students, and then realizing us crazy group of space camp counselors are now those same experts that other kids are looking up to, which is wild to us, knowing the skeletons in our closet and the stories we get to share behind, maybe at the bar or something. But it's true. We're stepping into the roles that we've always dreamt of, and wanting other people to have that same opportunity because they have the talent and the skill set. And I think enabling those dreams is incredibly powerful.
Seems like a really great job. So as the president, can I ask then, what does it look like? I love hearing the inspirational side of it, and especially those dinners sound amazing. What does the day-to-day look like? Like how do you practically turn all of that amazing enthusiasm and experience into a sort of day job, if I can just put it in very crude terms? Like, what does the job look like, and maybe what are you trying to still achieve with the role, as I'm guessing you're probably still shaping it to some degree, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's still shaping the role, trying to make it be even bigger than what it was. And so I'm still trying to figure out all the different ways that we're going to accomplish the goals that we've established. I think we've got an amazing research platform that's allowing incredible groups of people to come together. And I'd love to see that expand exponentially and provide additional resources. And through that it requires partnering with companies and other space companies and reaching out to the industry to say that, yes, we are focusing on space, but we're solving problems here on Earth that are going to benefit you and your company. I'm looking forward to seeing our expanded offerings when it comes to educational courses to allow people to, on their own, take a course on an introduction to spaceflight that maybe isn't available from the geography where you're located, and then go down our curricular path that we're building out to take a deeper dive. And I believe, Jen, you're helping out with the astronaut health and performance courses, and we want to share more about what those are, what that means. What does space architecture look like? What do space transportation systems look like now and from the past? And what could they look like towards in the future? Space policy and law is a big area to investigate as well, because that's how you get the funding to do all these great big projects that you have dreamt up. And so communicating with people and understanding what motivates them to change policies to get funding is highly important, not just within the United States, but anywhere you're located. We all have dreams of going to space, but we can't get there on our own. And so getting there together is the only way forward. So building a coalition of industry professionals, building a platform of educational resources, telling our story and sharing podcasts like the one we're doing now is highly critical to making that happen. And beyond that, I'm continuing to do work, whether it is helping figure out how to bring circadian-based lighting to more people to help improve their lives in office buildings, because lighting is such an important thing. As you can imagine, if you go off into space, that that you don't get natural sunlight, which is a misnomer because none of us experience natural sunlight on the ground. We experience filtered sunlight through our atmosphere. So really, we're experiencing this amazing earth light all around us. And how does that impact our daily lives? Continuing to do we work on with microgravity research and working with companies that are doing advanced robotics with us bent towards space, and then also I'm looking at writing down some of these stories and eventually publishing a book if I can figure the time out to make that happen. So all those things continue to help shape my experiences and the mission that we're trying to push forward at DSI, because it's not just stagnant. We want to do this collaboratively with amazing people from all over the world.
Yeah, there's a big push on collaboration, which is great to see. Now, Jen, you said you're kind of more in an advisor role at DSI, but could you just again sort of explain a little bit then what that actually looks like for you, how much of that takes up your time, how that sort of practically fits into your day, and is there anything more that you foresee coming out of that role that you're doing with DSI?
Yeah, it's definitely been evolving. I had to step back from a technical director role because some of my career changes and family changes were pushing and pulling. And I think Chris pulled on a lot of this. Like our lives, we've got a lot of demands and, responsibilities, and you're talking about like trying to trade between them, or there's tension and pushing and pulling. And I try to remind most folks, in your career, and in life, there's different seasons for things where the priority comes up on something and it has to come down on something else. Like you can't be 100% everything all of the time. We try those things. I've been there. It doesn't end well, you yourself, or, I always talk to folks and try to use some humor, of course, to get it across, but it's like getting in the plane and they talk about, you have to put your oxygen mask on first if you want to help anybody else. Like you got to take care of you so you're well enough to do a good job and be the person people need you to be, So I did step back from the technical director role, but that really, I think, had gone in a place where the organization had matured. The volunteer workforce that is so incredibly impressive was really accomplishing a lot of stuff with the research programs that I could step away in good conscience. Like it's fine. You guys are rocking and rolling. And so in advisory, I think it's more, and it's a lot directly with Sarah, like, what do you need from me or her people? And I hadn't met Chris yet, but just like I'm at their disposal, and for me, that can be, whatever hour or two a week that people need from me to make sure that, they're getting the insight from the folks who have been down these roads. But it's also interesting because I also have spent a lot of time trying to be not only aware and very conscious of, but capable of stepping back and understanding my own bias. I grew up in the NASA culture. It's a thing. It's a thing, and it can be really strong. And I battled back. I think intrinsically kind of a defiant person. I'm sure my parents would have told you all about that. So I was one of those people at work. They're like, "Oh, you're aggressive." I was like, "Well, two things. I'm from New Jersey, and that's kind of my personality." Just like, but to that point, like I want to challenge things, and I want to challenge myself. Like maybe my thoughts about how this needs to be solved are not correct. Like the commercial space opens up a whole new way of solving problems and pursuing solutions that NASA was not open to for a variety of reasons, and they're not always kind of the culture's fault. Like limitations of budget, schedule, and politics weighed pretty heavily of what we could and couldn't do at times. But for me now, it's like giving maybe that more round, because I spend so much time not directly on technical work, but more that tension between schedule, budget, technical, program manager, policy, legal. Like these are a lot of variables in order to make the thing happen. How do you approach them? How do you speak to people who come from those different areas who do not appreciate the technical depth at times? Like I can watch when you're taught to like read a room, And when you start to see the eyeballs stray, like, oh, she's going on for 45 minutes on cardiovascular disorders, and I'm trying to understand like what the mass power and volume is for some piece of medical hardware. So you kind of have to like change your behavior and realize, have empathy for the other person and compassion. Like, what do they need to know, and how can I make sure the content matches. In a more direct role, working on the astronaut health and performance content was like the first couple lectures to kind of baseline everybody who is coming into DSI or wants to be part of DSI. Just to Chris's point, like there's a lot of information out there. Trying to be the judge of quality is challenging for someone new to the industry, right? And I want to be, one of those people who can be a trusted source. And I'm going to tell you, most of the time I don't have the right answer. What I have is information that can help you critically think about where the potential solutions are. And also, I want to continue to remind folks that spaceflight, like other really challenging expeditionary-like activities, is a forcing function to get us to solve problems that we really just can't make ourselves solve here for a variety of reasons. And it can also be the place where we prove it to you that it can work. Because I've been there when, we've made technical strides, and a lot of it has to do with on the commercial side. Well, there's the comment that kind of undercuts a lot of our investments at times is, well, there's not a market for that. And my answer has become, well, that's because people don't know it's possible, right? They are accustomed to having certain solutions available to them and just can't understand that this other thing could supplant like many, many facets of a current solution. And we're like, well, spaceflight is going to force us to do that because I don't have the luxuries that we have here on Earth, particularly in a first world country, which has the finances to actually be funding usually the fundamental work and de-risk the industry. So I think it's this amazing like ecological opportunity to create solutions and demonstrate them that will make a very powerful impact back on Earth. So I want to wrap that into the technical conversation of, well, how does the body adapt and change? When I talk about astronaut health and performance, there's going to be a lot more layers to it. We won't pursue everything equally as depth because some things are going to spin off into other courses or lectures. But at least acknowledging like that there's facts, we've measured things. The interpretation of those facts can be challenging at times because we're extrapolating from, in Chris's case, like a 5-day mission. How is that? What is that? If I measure something in a 5-day mission, what does that mean about humans that go on 30 days or humans that go on 6 months or humans that go on missions for 3 years? How does that information allow us to project forward and understand what we would do about it? And then the diversity of humans matter. That's something else to discuss. And we're seeing that play out actually in healthcare regularly. Like if you only studied something in a small population and a very, population that had a lot of similarities, you could be very wrong about applying it to people who are very different, diversity of ethnicity and cultural background. So it's all those factors create this really, I think, just limitless opportunity to do a lot of great work. And with DSI, I still, am being one of Sarah's biggest fans, but this instantiation of the ability to network, and I pull on something Chris said earlier about, putting himself out there and letting people know, like sending that strong signal of he's always been passionate about and loved spaceflight, was involved in space camp. Like it wasn't just about waiting for the opportunity to find him. He was following his passion, doing all the things that created a network, and kind of, it's like the saying is like luck favors the prepared. Like you had actually been laying these things out because it was right and it was part of your passion, and yet it created this really high probability that if there was going to be that serendipitous opportunity, it was going to connect to you. So you just have to think a lot of times it's like sweat equity. The payoff isn't immediate. You got to like delay some of that gratification, but you gain from it anyway. That especially that intellectual part, the critical thinking part, the ability to hear from people who come from a very different place than you do and say, oh, I've taken some things for granted here. I've made some poor assumptions. like, what a fascinating opportunity to learn from someone else. So I think DSI just wraps all of that together in a community, not a hierarchy. So I've really just, couldn't support it more. So any way they need me, I'm at your beck and call, you know, as much as we can make it possible. But they've never overreached. I've never felt like it's something where I couldn't do that much work. It was always really just people were very gracious
And I like what you said about a community and how we're building, a group of people that have gone through this process together that have a shared vision for what, access to space research and education should be all about, and connecting people together. That's hugely important as part of this mission that we're working towards. So I love that you mentioned that, because it is a community. We can't accomplish great things on our own. The expression goes, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, go together. And we're building that community of togetherness that are from people from all over the world.
Yeah, so I know you've touched a little bit on this, but who are your ideal sort of people you want to be part of this DSI community? And then as in the people that you feel that this vision is really ideal for?
Yeah, so the people I want to be part of DSI, you're asking, I think, well, it's for anybody who's curious about space and wants to deepen their knowledge and deepen their experience a little bit more than what they might have access to. This is for the people that absolutely have a passion for it, but just don't have the same resources to attend like International Space University, or they just feel like they have something to contribute on the global stage. Those are the people that I want to attract into this. Those passionate, very interested, space thinking individuals who also at the same time realize that whatever we do in space is going to also solve big problems here on Earth. And knowing that, keep an open mind, but come into this ready to work and ready to have a good time, because it's about connecting people together, providing those opportunities, and really just giving everyone those building blocks to take it to the next step. If you don't have an access card to get to where you want to next, if you don't have a connection to get into the industry or to that job or that company that is your dream job, come to DSI. We'll connect you with people that have similar dreams and passions, and we're looking at connecting people that way who want to help support that dream, as well as connecting you with people that have been there and gone through that in a various number of ways.
Yeah, great. Jen, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to add to that. I think I think that really is that community mindset of it really is open to people who are passionate and curious, and hope to give as much as they can receive from the entity. Like it again, it's an ecosystem, so it benefits from people bringing their energy, their passion, their background. It doesn't have you don't have to be aerospace educated to come in. I actually think people who come from outside those formal training are incredibly imaginative, and then they come with really creative solutions. And then the question is, can we make it real? That to me, that was like that science fiction to science fact, objective of some of the projects we've been part of along the way. Like everyone, I still have a variety of slides, and one of them is, the Star Trek space. Now I'm going to say it, and I can't remember the tricorder, right? Like, how can I scan you and understand everything about your body without poking you and putting holes in you or taking blood out of you? And we're still on that, with that challenge, and it's not wrong, right? It is. There's stuff out there. There's signals we don't know how to interpret, and I may need, it's actually like an electronic engineer, someone, a psychologist, a biophotonics person. All comers have to come to the table. So don't think you're not relevant. I have no idea who's relevant to that project, right? Just come to the table and let's put some ideas down and have some conversations. So I think that type of community and ecosystem will produce really amazing things, including opportunities for people to pursue. I also think it helps people who are in areas where just the formality isn't, the infrastructure is not there, and they can continue, especially in this world that we've, established the value of virtual interaction. That geographically we don't have to be in the same place to produce really good products, so that they can be engaged and bring value without having to, do some of these Herculean efforts to relocate themselves to places where the industry exists. By its very nature, the industry is in the environment. So right. I think that's what DSI helps people understand.
I'm just wondering, on the back of that, whether it's also, by giving this access to resources and research and allowing people to be wherever they are and maybe get themselves up to a level that wasn't possible before. Is there also in that an acknowledgement that maybe the industry is moving more outside of the US? Does it feel like there are more things happening outside of the US as commercial space grows, and maybe in light of more recent changes to budgets within the US and whatnot, that you think that maybe other parts of the world are where the next biggest thing might happen, or where the next talent is likely to emerge from? Is this also an acknowledgement of that? So it's not just about maybe bringing people from outside into what obviously is still a very central hub of space in the US, but acknowledging that there's some other hubs popping up more globally.
100%. Absolutely. I mean, we see the Saxford Space Center in northern Scotland coming online. Looking there you go. Seeing, hope you get to orbit this year, right? Or maybe early next year. The Australian Space Agency is working on getting to orbit as well. From there, they've got a couple of launch sites, both north and the south side of the country. And Rocket Lab being based out of New Zealand. We see continuous pressure coming out of China trying to get to the moon. We see India launching continuously. There are a growing number of space launch companies that are trying to, and agencies as well that are trying to get out into space. But I think there is a shift that we're starting to see, that when you don't have two leaders in space agencies anymore, you now have a variety of commercial companies that are providing those services. Other people start to realize, okay, maybe I can get into this too. Maybe there's an opportunity for me to use my imagination to build something. And so you're seeing other countries and other companies take note and take action. And so it's absolutely becoming an international effort to harness the promise of what space can offer. Whether it is actually doing work in space or business in space, or using space as that platform to inspire and create new projects and new solutions for things that we've been tackling for centuries on the ground.
And here we are living it in this podcast with sitting in Scotland, sitting in Ghana, and across the US as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely an exciting shift in the model. With commercial space and other countries also financially supporting, the economy, the space economy, and really scientifically wanting to engage. And somewhat, when you look at the different activities going on, especially with respect to policy, there's all kinds of national security issues. So, it is multifaceted to warrant the multinational attention and investment in it. So it's definitely healthy to see it happen, for sure. I'm very happy to see it happen.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I totally
great.
agree.
Just about wrapping up here, this is just the beginning, getting to know some of the key members of the DSI community. Before we go, Jen, I'll start with you. You've had, a great illustrious career in space and is still evolving. Are there any relevant, general career advice you would give to any, especially our young people who want to get into space? I mean, I'm sure you've heard different stories of people how they got into space, but I think from your experience, what advice would you give to, to anyone?
Jen, do you want to go first on that one?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think along the way we've been trying to encourage people to be flexible. I think career path wise about what is relevant and what is the concern that it's not a straight line there most of the time. I'd say of the people even I know, their route to either working for NASA, an aerospace contractor, becoming a U.S. astronaut, were nowhere near straight lines. Kjell Lindgren, who right now is running flight operations director at Johnson Space Center, gave a talk last year at the Human Research Program Investigator Workshop. I've known Kjell for probably close to 20 years when he first came in as an ASCAN, even I think during the selection process. He's a very remarkable individual, and I'm hoping one of his talks, you should probably just figure it out, is on YouTube. But he tells his story, which is nowhere near a straight line. Always had a passion about space, always dreamt of being an astronaut, but he thought, I can never do that, and was going this way and that way. And sure enough, he landed back there very successfully. And it was just patience and grace. We're so hard on ourselves, and that whole idea, Chris mentioned it before with imposter syndrome, which I hadn't heard that term until probably just a couple years ago. And I was like, what are you asking me? But I was like, oh, being insecure. Yeah, no, I get that. That's not uncommon at all. But sometimes you just got to do it anyway. But they say courage is fear that said its prayers, right? It's not, no one's lacking fear when you see it get done. It is that you realize I got to go anyway. There's this other impulse driving you, or just saying, I'm okay, with failure. I got to be okay with this, because you say I'm more likely to regret something I never tried than failing at something I did. And I think in the spaceflight industry, because we've had such a narrow way of getting involved formally, jobs in space, national spaceflight programs have been relatively small numbers of opportunities. Those seem like what people were clawing at the door for. If you think of yourself and your skills applying to spaceflight and aerospace careers differently than exactly that kind of formality, you will watch all these opportunities open. And then that's where you get that positive cycle of more and more opportunities come up. And now you have a portfolio to show what you've done, which is where I think DSI starts, really helping bolster people with no, I can actually show you work I've done. I have these projects, and we've built prototypes, and these prototypes have gone on to be tested, really cool stuff that you can walk in with. And that's just kind of years of building. And you say, started as a passion. Maybe I thought it could be a hobby. It wasn't paying the bills. But suddenly you roll into a place when that opportunity, the luck favors the prepared, you can hit the ground running, and it could be with a commercial spaceflight entity that didn't exist 2 years ago. And you can really be successful, in your heart of hearts of what you wanted to do. I will always say money doesn't follow. But,
fair enough.
Yeah, that'll always be a challenge. You were there are things we do for a living that we're passionate about, and you were and you are well fed and housed, and the basics are met. But you were most of us are these are passion projects, but it's so worth it.
I love that. I mean, I agree with that completely. I think there is still that traditional path of becoming a NASA astronaut. There are still those traditional paths of getting straight A's or getting high marks in high school to go on to be at the most prestigious colleges and graduating in 4 years. And then there's the majority of people like me who took a lot longer than 4 years to get my first degree because we found other passions. And your resume gets more varied and wild as you start looking back. But sharing what you're excited about, exploring new opportunities, being open to change and possibilities are hugely important. And being willing to try on something new. I think some of the best interviews I've been a part of as I was going through the process of interviewing some interns to join Blue Origin, the ones that stood out are the ones that had those passion projects on the side that weren't directly correlated with their coursework. It showed where their true passion lies, where their curiosity lies. And so absolutely jump into a program like DSI or to another activity outside your traditional classroom that you get to try on new things, make mistakes, learn from them, and find ways to be open to new possibilities. And then share that with others. Say, hey, I want to try this, or I tried this and it didn't work, but maybe you can keep me in mind to try it again in a different way next time. And that's what we want people to realize. And DSI provides another opportunity to do that with others who feel the same way.
That's great. I think there's so much that's going to come out of this still, and you've hinted, at some of those things, and so hopefully people listening to this will follow along on the website, follow on social media. I think we've got a newsletter as well they can sign up to, and keep up to date, because it's constantly evolving, and anything sort of community based that this is emphasized, tends to also grow in nature as well as more and more people get invited along. And so I know in the next episode, we'll delve a little bit more into the research that you've highlighted as a big chunk of the work of DSI. We'll be talking to a researcher who's already kind of gone through the whole program. We'll be talking about, I think, some of the issues around access that we've already touched on a little bit in this episode. What the current state of the sector is and what DSI is looking to address. So it's a really exciting time, and it's been really great to chat to both of you. So thank you across time zones for your perspectives and just your personal stories. You mentioned Columbia. That was a really tough moment, but as a moment that galvanized something in your career, I think it's really worth bringing that up. And we don't have Space Camp where I grew up in South Africa. I'm not sure if there's anything quite like that in Scotland. There's probably some very basics starting around it, and you've both kind of mentioned Space Camp with such passion as well. And I'd love to know more about that, and see if other people are kind of taking their experiences and spinning it out into various global space camps as a result. But all of this is really very interesting from this idea of like, here's what I've learned, here's what I've experienced, what can I go forth and share with others.
Well, I look forward to that conversation, talking about space camps around the world. That'll be a fun one to talk about. So that'll be great.
It's possibly a DSI spin out.
There you go. Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, you did.
I love it. Well, thank you both, Reggie and Stuart, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you as well, Jen. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope the listeners will come back and listen to further episodes and consider being a part of our DSI community as we continue to grow.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It was really great to get to know everybody better and have these kind of deep dives into how our lives got us where we are today, and really the sky's the limit.
Yeah, thank you, and see you on the next episode of the D-Space Chats. Bye for now.